So you can't just singularly look at one energy center and then not take into consideration the integrity of the rest of the energy centers. So, for example, I see this often. If somebody is fearful and they don't trust and expand through the space of their first energy center and they start to close that up, I typically see them open their seventh energy center. So if they have been conditioned to believe or are ingrained with the belief system that the human body is not safe to live in, then they're going to go up and out of their body and say, well, I'm going to live in the spiritual realm.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Shifting Dimensions podcast. This is a podcast where we explore the unseen, the unknown, and the transformative moments that shift our understanding of reality. I'm your host, Jumi Moses, spiritual seeker and metaphysical investigator, exploring the mysteries of existence. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Mary Sanders. Dr. Mary has a wealth of experience as a self employed medical intuitive and chiropractor. She is deeply committed to guiding individuals on their journey of personal transformation. She focuses on helping people cultivate thriving health, happiness, and purpose through the powerful tools of energy medicine, spiritual embodiment, and meditation. Dr. Mary is also the host of the internationally acclaimed podcast, Energy Medicine, which discusses everything related to aligning the mind, body, and spirit. Dr. Mary, thank you so much for joining me today on Shifting Dimensions.
Jimmy, the honor is all mine. I'm so tickled pink to be here with you and your listeners, and I just know that we're going to get into a very heartfelt but yet juicy conversation.
Absolutely. And as I was saying before we started the show, that I'm just really excited to speak with you. I've heard people talk about our energy system before, chakras and all of that stuff, but there's a way you talk about it that resonates with me, and I think it's going to resonate with the listeners as well. So I just want to start off bare bones. What is an energy body?
Oh my goodness, you go straight for the cutthroat, don't you? All right. So, listeners, I come from a premise that we as physical bodies are part of a collective. So that means that we are part of something much greater that exists outside of our physical bodies. Okay. And with that, that means that we are part of an electromagnetic frequency. We have energy that runs through us within our physical body and literally like through the bones, through the tissues, through the viscera, and through the blood and circulatory system, all the way down into what we call the interstitial space, the space between one cell and another cell. And so, because we are electromagnetic within our physical body, surrounding us is a subtle energetic body that is also electromagnetically driven, and that is considered to be our aura, our biofield, and it is also known as the energy body.
Thank you for explaining that. And I wanted to start there, right? Because, and just for those who are listening and tuning in, and you'll be able to tell by the title of this episode that we're going to be focusing on talking about our energy bodies, our chakras, and how they affect our physical health, mental health, and also spiritual health, right? So that's why I wanted to start off with the energy body, because I think a lot of times we live in a world that only focuses on the physical body and, looking at, oh, okay, well, you're having skin issues. Let's look at the underlying cause, but they don't go deeper than, I guess, the biology of the body, right? And we know that there are different energy systems within the body that manifest physically as well. So I just wanted to start there so people really understand, what we're talking about. So now that we started there, before we go into the chakras and the endocrine system and all of that stuff, Dr. Mary, what got you into this work? What was your journey? What was your path into this?
Okay, Jimmy, you ask, so you're going to get an earful, okay? You can feel free to interrupt me. So, the first thing that I want to share with you and the listeners, I was born hearing impaired. So, my hearing capacity is 50% what a normal person hears. And I went undiagnosed for the first 3 years of my life. And so, for the first 3 years of my life, I lived in this domain, which is somewhere between the physical domain and the spiritual domain. I was receiving information at that age above and beyond the traditional five senses. Now, I believe that all of us listening have the capacity to tap into this awareness if we choose to. It just so happened that I also believe that if you're disabled or you have challenges in one of the traditional five senses, that you naturally start to develop extrasensory perception. So I couldn't necessarily hear what my parents were saying, but I could physically feel the love of in my environment. And so that feeling turned into clairsentience, the development of being able to sense and perceive energy or information from other people, places, and things. I can physically feel them within my body. Okay. So that's how I kind of came into this world. My neurology then became wired because that was just a natural way for me to receive information. And so what ended up happening is that, Jumi, I really loved my family. Like I wanted to fit in. And I kind of on some level knew that what I was experiencing was not the normal. Like, I remember growing up and coming in and receiving information that I shouldn't have received and sharing that with my mom. And she was a devout Catholic at the time. And she just looked at me like, how do you know this information? And number one, how do you know it? And number two, there's no way you could receive this information. And so she would kind of look at me out of the corner of her eye and she'd be like, dismiss that, dismiss that. So I wasn't necessarily raised in an environment which cultivated or, allowed me to explore those kinds of information. So I began to desensitize myself. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to fit into my community. I wanted to fit into be, friends with my classmates. So I kind of minimized my weirdness. And so then when I finally went to I guess I should say that my parents chose, given the tools and the resources that they had available to them at the time, they chose to mainstream me when it came to my education. So, what that means is I did not have any special classes or any sign language or I didn't have any special offerings made available to me. I just was put into a classroom. I sat up front and I did my best to receive the information. So it wasn't until I went to I guess I should also say that because my parents had an expectation that I was to be normalized, I worked super hard academically. And so I just studied hard. That's just essentially what I did. And so I studied hard through my just my rudimentary education, and then I went on to excel in my undergraduate degrees of chemistry and zoology. And then 3 days underneath, after my graduate program, I was enrolled in chiropractic school. So that I was fast tracked academically. And when I went to chiropractic school was the first time, Jimmy, the first time somebody said, what do you feel? When you touch this, what do you physically feel? And I'm like, seriously? You want to know what I'm feeling when I touch this thing? Let me tell you what I feel. And so consequently, I was in and surrounded with my tribe. We were talking about something that was above and beyond the materialistic world, the material realm that we live in. And so we said, okay, the human body heals from above down, inside and out. And within each and every single one of us, we have an innate intelligence and we have a somatic wisdom. So I was like, wow, okay, this is it. This is what I have been feeling. I'm here to tell you all that I sense, feel, and know above and beyond the traditional five senses. And that's what allowed me to enter into the realm of having my hands on bodies, and I could sense and feel what was happening within them before they physically could tell me what was going on with themselves. And then people would be like, how did you know? And I'm like, I just know these things, you know? I just put my hands on your body and I can physically sense where your pain is before you even start to acknowledge it. So that's how it all happened.
So fascinating. It's always interesting when I hear these stories about how when you're younger, you have this spiritual gift, and because of the lack of knowledge and understanding and acceptance of those type of gifts, oftentimes people are forced to suppress them. But I'm so happy that there was a point in your life where that was kind of reintroduced to you and you're like, okay, this is a gift I can actually use in my practice as a chiropractor and not have to dumb it down or, stay away from it because I didn't want to be perceived as weird. So, very fascinating story. And speaking about the fact that you're able to touch someone and sense what's going on with them. I mean, you call yourself a medical intuitive, and I've heard of medical intuitives, and a lot of times the type of medical intuitives I come across, I mean, listening to what they talk about is they're able to see what's going on in someone's body, but how your gift works is you touch the person and you can sense what's going on in their body. How are you able to sense it? Do you feel it in your body? I guess that's what clairsentience is, where you're able to pick up on the energy or vibration within someone's body. I'll stop talking now and let you kind of explain how that works.
You know, I really appreciate this question because I have to tell you that my how I ended up here today, my journey has been anything but linear. Now, as I started talking about how I became a chiropractor, that felt really linear to me. Like I felt like I was predestined, like my purpose was to have my hands on physical bodies. And that is still true to this day. Like I don't deviate much from that path of my purpose. But what ended up happening in and again, I practiced with my hands on people for about 23 years. And I was successful. I'm not going to lie to anybody, but I created a couple of practices where I became a pretty affluent businesswoman. And I got away from the art of sensing and feeling, and that's my true north. And so I had to go through a physical and emotional and energetic burnout before I could come around full circle and show up today as a medical intuitive. And so what ended up happening, Jimmy, my path led us to traveling internationally. We sold everything and moved from Colorado Springs, Colorado. Then we moved to Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. We were there for, let's say, almost shy of 3 years. And it was at that time that I literally didn't have a brick and mortar place that I was practicing. So I literally went through a huge identity crisis and I was like, how am I supposed to show up in this world utilizing my gifts if I don't have my hands physically on bodies? And furthermore, is that really truly what I should be doing? Like, I had these big questions. Who am I? What am I? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? And so I took the necessary time out to listen. And for those of you listeners, no pun intended, that are listening to this audio and you're at a crossroads in your life and you are accustomed to being a doer and you struggle with being a beer, I'm here to tell you that that slowing down process is part of the whole integration. And so it was during this time that I left. I ran away from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and I went to Bali, Indonesia. I finished up my YTT, finished up my yoga teachers training certification, and it was during that time, Jimmy, I fell in love with meditation. I had time for the first time in my life. to slow down and to turn my awareness internally. And so I went back to Ho Chi Minh City and I was meditating every day. And to make a long story short, I was having some really far out experiences. I was like, what is happening? What is happening to me? I'm digging it, but what and how is it happening to me? And so that prompted me to go study in the Whole Being Institute in Lenox, Massachusetts, and I studied underneath Dr. Tal Ben Shahar, who's a big name in the field of positive psychology. He was the one person who was breaking down the neurology, the neuroscience as to what was happening within the brain when people meditated. And so I went and I studied underneath him because I was like, okay, now I know the human body, I mean, incredibly well from the neck on down. Now tell me what's happening in the space between my ears when I'm meditating because this is nothing shy of miraculous. I was starting to experience things like my intuition kind of came online and I wasn't sure what to do with it. So that's one part of my journey. And then life happens. I wasn't getting any younger, and I experienced the death of my mother, and I experienced the death of my sister. And I knew that there were energetic cords that were changing as the result of these two beautiful souls passing. And so I still was kind of questioning, okay, there's so much more. Now I know the body, now I know the mind. I know that there's a huge system that's happening outside the physical body. And my husband's like, do it, go study intuitive medicine, just go do it. And I'm like, oh, that just doesn't sound very practical. And he's like, you've wanted to do this since forever. Let's just go do it. And so we were still living internationally, and I had this belief system that I couldn't learn remotely. Like this was a skill that had to be developed only in person. Only in person could I possibly learn how to do this. So I had to sit with that discomfort, and I attended the Academy of Intuition Medicine remotely because I knew that we were not going to settle and that I wanted to hold space for other people remotely utilizing my gifts. And so, again, for the second time, somebody was like, okay, Mary, here's your opportunity. I know you're receiving information above what you get from your hands and clairsentiently. How else can you receive information? So then I tapped into my clairvoyance, then I tapped into my direct knowing, then I tapped into abstract knowing. Then I was really starting to really experience how information flows to me as a beautiful spirit residing within my human home. And so then finally, Jumi, I had the opportunity to say, okay, cool, this is really cool. I know the body, I know the brain, and now I know the energy system. I now can hold space for people integratively and holistically, meaning I can't look at a beautiful spirit residing within their human home and only see the physical body. We are so much more than the physical body, and we are so much more than the emotions, and we're so much more than our thoughts. And so here I am going, okay, wow, this is blowing my mind, number one. Number two, I'm like, this is like what I've wanted to, this is like what I am intended to do. And so when I hold space, sacred space, I really get the opportunity to expand my awareness. So I kind of get somewhat entranced, meaning I go into a meditative state and I set the intention to lean away from my prefrontal cortex or my forehead or my analytical brain, and I allow my awareness to shift back so that I can be a conduit and meet people spirit to spirit. And then I receive the information from the other person's spirit. And most often, I chase the sensations through my physical body. It makes no linear sense to me. which obviously intuition is anytime that you receive information. Intuition is to receive information beyond the abstract or beyond the cognitive knowing. So this is information that I shouldn't necessarily know, but I physically feel. And so then I kind of jump around and I'm like, okay, in understanding where the energy is, where my awareness is focused, then I can kind of zone in on an individual energy center and literally dissect it more. So clairsentience to me, and again, if you that's a clairsentience is a umbrella of a definition that we in the material world we have defined, and that in the field of psi and understanding that there's a bigger realm of how we receive information, most of us don't categorically just fit into one clairsentience or one clairvoyance or telekinesis or remote viewing. I mean, we can embody a blend of these things, which is a unique way that we as individuals receive information.
Thank you so much for breaking that down and kind of giving more context to your story, right? So, if I just to make sure I fully understand and the listeners are following, y when you were younger, you had these spiritual gifts, one of them being able to, touch someone's body and kind of get a sensation of what was going on in their body. But as time has passed through your practice as a chiropractor, through your journey to Vietnam and all these other, you know, situations where you've learned more, not just about meditation, but energy medicine, um, now it's beyond just touching someone and seeing what's and feeling what's going on within them. You're using your other psychic abilities as well. So you don't have to be in front of someone or touching them to understand what's going on in their body, and you're able to pick up information from their auric fields and kind of meet them spirit to kind of get downloads that kind of tell you what's going on with their body. And you still feel those sensations in your body as well, correct?
I do.
Okay, okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure that the listeners were understood that. Before we even start talking about the different energy centers within the body, you said something interesting about while, getting into meditation and some of the experiences that you were having. And I'm really curious to know, was there any mystical experience that stood out to you the most while you were in deep meditation when you talked about you noticed your intuition was picking up faster and you were having these experiences that you hadn't had before?
You know, when I think back to my beginning days of meditation, now mind you, I had been a yoga practitioner for over 30 years before I went and really kind of embarked upon the meditation journey. And part of my favorite, well, I'm not going to lie, my favorite is the final Shavasana when we get to lay and I get to play and to feel my energy body because I've now expanded into that space. And so when I got into meditation, first and foremost, I struggled. I was just like, oh, wow, I don't know if I can really lean into, just observing my thoughts. I went in thinking, oh, I've got to clear my mind. My mind needs to be void of thought. And truly, that's not the goal of meditation. And so I struggled with it. I resisted it initially. And it wasn't until I kind of surrendered into that the information that was flowing through me at the time of meditation deserved an awareness and an acknowledgement. And once I did that, then it's kind of like something, there was an act of surrendering that happened for me. And so then I didn't get obsessed with my thoughts, but I knew which thoughts to pay attention to. And so those thoughts then became intuitive information. And so even in the deep recesses of, that magical space, at minute like 20 in your meditation where you're starting to connect into the bliss body and you're just witnessing a beautiful, miraculous, whatever is happening, the symphony that happens within the physical body. I love my meditation. If I don't meditate on a daily basis, I get pretty cranky, sincerely. So, I believe you wanted to know my biggest revelations. I guess the biggest revelation, those were my revelations. A, we are not our thoughts. And the purpose is not to create, to void all of your thoughts in meditation. The trick is to know which information to pay attention to and how to trust that information you received.
That's good to know. I keep trying so hard to get into meditation and I just struggle because my mind is constantly racing, but it's good to know that it's not, you're not necessarily trying to get rid of all those thoughts. You're just trying to figure out what thoughts to pay attention to, what thoughts to give weight to. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so now let's kind of focus back into our energy body and our energy centers. And just to make sure I fully understand, is the chakra system, is that part of the energy system of our body? Are those the energy centers within our body? And if you can kind of talk about each of those systems.
Yeah, I'm happy to. The chakra system, it may sound new agey, and for somebody that's not been exposed to the chakra system, I want to share with you that it's part of the ancient tradition as far as the Vedic sciences. This information has been known, talked about, and observed for many, 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 many years. Okay. So a chakra, when you look at the word, it just essentially means wheel. Okay. So it's a wheel, it's a vortex of energy. So when you think of a vortex, I like to think of literally a funnel that you may use in your kitchen. So I use my funnels like when I get a bag of spices and I want to take my spices and put them into a small little glass container. So when we look at the funnel system, it has three primary focuses. Number one, it receives the information from the environment. Number two, you assimilate that information. And then number three, you express back out into the environment your essence or your life force energy. Now, it took me the better part of 20 seconds to say those three steps, but it's so fast and part of the autonomic nervous system that your body literally knows how to integrate this information. It's not a part of the cognitive information that you have to process in your brain. So, when we are receiving information from our environment are people, places, things, the conditioned responses that we are ingrained to, behaviors, things that we pick up in our environment will influence. It travels, the energy travels from the environment, it travels from the object or person, place, or thing, and it travels through and permeates into the biofield surrounding our physical body. The information then gets picked up by the funnel or the vortex in the chakra, and then it has a spin to it. There's a frequency for each of the individual chakras. And for the sake of today's conversation, I am only going to be talking about the seven major chakras that we have within our physical body that are most closely related to our torso. There are so many more energy centers. Anybody who's ever been to an acupuncturist can testify that you have energy centers in your meridians and in your nadis all the way down to the tips of your toes. So there are many more than the seven major ones, but for the sake of today's conversation, we will just talk about the seven lower ones or the main one. And so once again, we receive information from the environment. The information comes to us and can permeate our biofield and gets picked up by the spin of the chakra, and it gets integrated or assimilated. Okay. Each energy center that I will make reference to today has an overarching theme. And within this overarching theme, all of us will have life experiences that could possibly promote in excess too much of that information, or we could have a life experience that creates a less than experience where it is underactive. So there's going to be an emotional component. There's also going to be a hormonal component. So once the energy comes into the funnel or the vortex or the chakra, it then gets transmitted within the corresponding endocrine gland. Now, this is not going to be a physiology 101 course. So, for the simplicity of today's conversation, an endocrine gland is essentially an organ within your body that is responsible for hormones. So your endocrine system will be influenced by the energy coming into our physical body. The hormones get produced. It gets picked up by the blood system or the circulatory system. It goes up into the brain. The brain then develops its neuropeptides, and then there is an emotional response. That emotional response will flood the body via the central nervous system, and then our life force energy or our essence will then get expressed out into the environment. Yeah, it's super, super cool. And it sounds incredibly complex, but Jimmy, if you would like, I'll go through and just kind of dissect, the first energy center, and then I'll give an overview of the energy centers above the first one.
Please.
Okay. And so the first energy center is located the deepest within your pelvis. Okay. The overarching theme is survival. So safety, security, and trust are the big, big, big human emotional elements of that energy center. Okay. Now, if you grew up in an environment in which your parents moved a lot, there was instability in the home. Maybe you were raised by a single parent, or maybe one parent was emotionally unavailable, or perhaps an alcoholic or addicted to drugs or other substances. Or, you can name any, many, or there was financial hardships and scarcity. Maybe it created the environment for you in which you did not feel safe. Okay. When you don't feel safe, it's really super hard for your spirit to fully embody his or her home. It's like you don't want to live completely within your physical body. So what ends up happening that the corresponding endocrine gland in this area happens to be the adrenal system. And most of you listening know that the adrenals are responsible for your fight or flight hormones. And your fight or flight hormones are designed. I mean, historically, if we saw a saber-toothed tiger or a bear, we are designed to be able to run from that or to defend ourselves. We are not neurologically or chemically designed to be in a fight or flight state 24/7, 365 for, years on end. Our body is not designed to be that way. Our physical body is not designed to be that way. Our emotional body is not designed that way, nor is our mental body, nor is our energetic body. So, some of the physical symptoms that can show up if this energy center is depleted, obviously, anything that has to do with the adrenals. So, maybe you're more fatigued, or maybe you don't have that get up and go. Or if you have the physical attributes of this dysfunction, maybe you have low back pain. Maybe you have tension in your bum. Maybe you have hip issues. Maybe there's knee dysfunction or varicosities within the legs or issues with the ankles or the feet, like plantar fasciitis, or those are the physical symptoms that relate to a deficiency, an imbalance within the first energy center. The human body never ceases to amaze me, Jimmy. It's like the coolest thing on earth.
It's just so fascinating that we're talking about this right now. Because I say this all the time on the podcast that, sometimes I'm going through something in my life and synchronistically I'll have a guest on the show talking about that same exact thing. And this weekend, actually yesterday on Sunday, because we're having this interview Monday, um, I took a long walk, which was very hard for me mentally. I've been feeling excessively fatigued. And, I was like, it's been a while since I've planted my feet on the earth, on some grass, on some sand, on some soil. So I took off my shoes and I planted my feet on the ground because I just was feeling very, ungrounded. And I know this is what you're talking about is the root chakra, correct?
Correct.
So it's interesting that you're saying like one of the symptoms of an imbalance is fatigue, extreme fatigue. And it's also interesting that the root chakra is tied into survival mode. And it's been a couple of months now since I was laid off from my 9 to 5 job. And while I can see that there's this divine orchestration going on in terms of making me sort of pause and think about what I'm, doing with my life and how I want to show up from a career standpoint, there are moments, of course, where it feels like, how am I going to survive? And then also thinking about the work that I really want to do. And the work I really want to do seems abstract. So how am I going to turn that into some sort of livelihood? Because we're still in this 3D construct, right? So I'm saying all of this to say, and I don't want to turn this into some sort of therapy session for me because it's not about me, but I just really resonate with everything that you're saying. And to be quite honest, I did not know any of this. To be frank with you, I've heard about the chakra systems before. I've talked to people about the chakra systems, but the way you just broke this down, a light bulb just went off in my head.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel that for you sincerely, and
Mhm.
I appreciate your candor and your vulnerability in sharing that with all of us because you're not alone. I can venture to say that, there's probably, I don't know, I would say probably 75 to 80% of the listeners are experiencing something that's relevant to this conversation. So thank you for bringing that up. And so, from a medical intuitive practitioner standpoint, I would say, Jimmy, you have the tools. And listener, you have the tools. What are those tools? Well, number one, if your body is fatigued, rest. Okay. So you feel ungrounded or untethered, then you have the tools and the resources to tap into the Earth's frequency, the Schumann's resonance, and to use that as a sustainable frequency to help saturate your physical body. And as you're saturating, then you can use it to cleanse and to charge various different energy centers so that you do feel more full of yourself and that you lean into the idea of trusting that you will always be cared for, loved, and nurtured, and provided for. You will always have a roof over your head, and you will always have your food on your dinner table. That's just the reality of things. And in that lens, you can sit in the appreciation and the gratitude for what you do have. And gratitude is the resonance, that higher frequency, that heartfelt frequency that will allow you the space to shift your energy so that you can become the version of self, so that you can literally attract that version of self that already has everything that you desire.
Thank you for that. That's really good to know. And I've been trying to stay in a space of gratitude. And to your point, there are a lot of people right now probably experiencing the same thing, given what's been going on with mass layoffs across different industries and just the impact of that on people's lives. So thank you for, again, kind of breaking down the root chakra. Is it possible for us to kind of quickly touch on the other six chakras and how,
Yeah,
the symptoms regarding those?
absolutely. I'm happy to. And what I'll do, and again, I know this can become overwhelming because it is a lot of information. I will just provide the location and the overarching theme of each of them. So we talked about the first energy center, which is located deep within the pelvis. The second energy center is still in the pelvis, but just slightly below the belly button. And it's within this energy center that we can connect into our deepest desires. How do we experience pleasure? What is it that we want to create? And it's connected into the reproductive organ. So obviously, that's the center of creation for, specifically more for men and for women. So that's the second energy center. Then when we go up into the upper abdomen above the belly button and underneath the rib cage, we'll find the third energy center. And this energy center is known as like the solar plexus. And it's within this energy center that we tap into autonomy, sovereignty, individuality, self-confidence, self-worth. So that's the third energy center located in the upper abdomen. The fourth energy center is located within the space of the heart, so midway on the breastbone or the sternum. And most people are like, yeah, yeah, I got it. I know what the heart's all about. And that may be true, but really, from the space of energy medicine, it is beyond love. It's into the space of compassion. And not necessarily, Jimmy, the space of compassion. It's for others. It's really for self. And when we dig a little bit deeper, we're going to bump into some of the perfectionistic tendencies that we might embody. So that's the fourth energy center. The fifth energy center is located within the throat, about midway down. And in this space, we will align with our authentic essence, our ability to communicate the truth. So when in a perfect world, we're going to have a clear awareness as to what it is that we desire and the ability to express our desires. So it's very linked in to the creativity of the second energy center. The space of the sixth is located in the forehead, also known as the third eye. Within this space, when we are in a healed and expanded version, we can tap into clairvoyance. We can see clearly the truth or the path that is laid out before us. That's the sixth energy center. The seventh energy center resides on the top of the cranium, on top of the head. And it's within this energy center that we can begin to connect into all that exists above and beyond our physical body, into the omnipresence, into the divine love, into divine universe, into God, into spirituality. So those are the overarching themes of the seven major energy centers located within the torso of the physical body.
So when we have one of these energy systems out of balance, like let's use the root chakra, for example, the first one that you said it's located in the deeper part of our pelvic area, does an imbalance in one energy system affect the balance of the other energy systems?
I think that's a beautiful question, and I'm really thankful that you're asking it. So here is what I'm going to say. From a physical standpoint, If you have an imbalance of an endocrine system, it's going to create a domino effect. You use that word, or and I will use the word a cascading of events. So you can't just singularly look at one energy center and then not take into consideration the integrity of the rest of the energy centers. So, for example, I see this often. If somebody is fearful and they don't trust and expand through the space of their first energy center and they start to close that up, I typically see them open their seventh energy center. So if they have been conditioned to believe or are ingrained with the belief system that the human body is not safe to live in, then they're going to go up and out of their body and say, well, I'm going to live in the spiritual realm. I'm going to bypass my physical body and live in the spiritual realm and not be bothered, with the materialism of the physical body. I see that often, and those are pretty big extremes. And then I also talked about like the connection between the second energy center with your creativity and then the balance of wanting to have an open fifth chakra so that you can physically express out into the world via your creative channels. And most people just assume that we're talking about vocalizing that energy. Now, we can vocalize it, which is a beautiful thing, but we can also express ourselves above and beyond just verbal communication. Some of us are wonderful artists. Some of us are incredibly talented writers. Some of us are beautiful orators, such as yourself. So there are ways to express oneself through the various different energy centers. And to answer your question, we are an integrative being. And so the energy center is fluid. So if you say, I've always had these issues, then know that you're empowered to change what you've been conditioned in the past because there's nothing stagnant about the energy system.
That's really good to know. Um, Couple follow-up questions really quickly. So when you say someone who, for example, is unbalanced in their root chakra, can't really stay in their physical body, finds themselves wanting to kind of live more in the spirit realm, people who are hearing that might be like, "Oh, are they having an out-of-body experience? Like what do you mean are they living in the spirit realm?" Could you explain a little bit more?
Well, actually, Jimmy, the way that you described it is, are they having an out-of-body experience is pretty accurate. Your spirit enters and exits out of the space of the seventh chakra. That's how we come into this world, and that's how we leave this world. If things are really, really uncomfortable and not safe for you on this physical planet or in this physical body, then you will do anything that you can to leave your body so that you don't have to stay fully inhabited within your human home.
Very fascinating. Okay, so speaking about, just kind of going back to everything that you're talking about, we were talking about the different chakras and how what are some of the symptoms, right? If they're out of balance. What I want to ask is, so basically what I'm trying to say is, the saying, protect your energy, right? So we're talking about the energy body. So when it comes to protecting our energy, which I guess that could be synonymous to like our auric field, right? Can someone else disrupt our energy systems? So basically, what I'm trying to say is like, I gave the example of, okay, someone losing their job, that might throw them off balance. Could you come in contact with people that could also affect your auric field, your energetic system, almost kind of like a psychic, spiritual ailment that you could pick up, if that makes any sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so let's talk about this a little bit. Just because you brought it up, this is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. Okay. So before I start talking about it, listeners, I want to let you know that I have a guided meditation specifically about creating strong auric boundaries. And it is a detached alignment meditation. It can be found on my website. I just want to plug that really quick because establishing strong boundaries is your God-given right. Okay. And so what happens is, as we are a small person, right, growing up in a family construct or within a community or within an environment, repetitively, you may get conditioned responses or messages coming at you. Okay. Messages coming at you that kind of break away or penetrate the various layers of your biofield. And so once it goes through the biofield and you pick it up within your chakra system, then it affects your energy body. So there are often times that I see within my industry that somebody has weak boundaries in that when I feel them through the psychometry of my hands, I sense and feel a lot of other people's energies. And when you sense a lot of other people's energies within your own energy body, it makes it really hard to know what's yours and what's somebody else's. Like I'm going to own my junk. I'm going to own my positive attributes as well. But please just let me know what's mine and everybody else, you take your stuff back. And so you want to know if somebody can cord you non-contractually, meaning can somebody come in without your permission and alter, cord, or hook your energetic body? And the answer is yes, unfortunately. But that means that your boundaries, and typically it happens on the backside of the physical body or the auric field because you don't see it coming. And most of us have stronger boundaries in the front and weaker boundaries on the backside of our physical body because the biofield is going to be above your physical body, surround you 360 degrees, and drop down and permeate the floor upon which you sit and underneath your feet. So it's a big space that you occupy. And if you feel like you've been courted non-contractually, then chances are it happened on the backside of you.
This is so fascinating. And I have like 10 follow-up questions, but I need to hold myself back, right? Because we're having a very um general conversation overview of the energetic body, the auric field. So for those of you who are listening and probably want to get into the weeds of everything, I'm going to do my best, but we're keeping it as high level as possible. Because a lot of what you're talking about, I've talked to other spiritual or psychic practitioners, right, where we talk about kind of almost like psychic attacks, right? Or someone kind of getting a hold of your energetic body, or your auric field and kind of manipulating it a little bit. And people have talked about, there's certain places that are prime for that stuff. For example, this is not demonizing bars or necessarily having a alcoholic beverage, but I've had people on the show talk about that, sometimes, for example, a lot of ingestion of alcohol can weaken your auric field, and psychic free radicals or people who don't have the best intentions, or other energies and other planes that don't have the best intentions could hook into your energetic field. So I kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit so people can get a full understanding and scope of how deep this goes, and how, your auric field and your energy field can be, the imbalance can be triggered from different things, not just like a physical thing or like a life event, right? So just wanted to touch on that really quickly. And part of the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to ask you, if someone were to come to you and they're looking for healing or some sort of rebalance within their energy field because maybe they're having physical manifestations or their life is out of order, how do you work with them? And is healing or rebalancing of their energy, is it instantaneous or does it take time?
You know what? It does take time. It does take time because it's multifaceted. Okay. And so, the intention when I hold space for others as a remote, energetic healer or a medical intuitive is always to, number one, allow their spirit to guide the healing process. So I'm constantly asking their spirit, what does Jumi need to know today in order to move to her next phase of healing? And so it's like layers of an onion. So you'll start to peel back what needs to be revealed to you in present time. And I also trust that things that you don't need to know at this moment are not what, we go sequentially through what you need to know. And so, yes, it's rebalancing, it's charging, it's reclaiming of your energy system. And so, once you can really identify and reclaim, cleanse, and charge your energy center, then you can clearly define your boundaries and you can step into that essence to where you are you're fully of yourself. I want you to be full of yourself. I want your energy saturation to be only 100% Jimmy.
That makes sense, and I imagine that takes time. So you said something that I thought was interesting, where you talked about the fact that if someone is able to hook into your energy system and throw you off balance, if it's non-contractual, and then it made me think about like, some energy practitioners also uh use past life regression to inform their work, right? Which tends to deal with karma and contracts that people have made from different past lives. So, can you just talk about what you mean by non-contractual? And do you use past life regression in your work to gain insight on what might be causing energy imbalances and if it's brought over from a different lifetime, if you believe in that?
Oh, I absolutely do believe in that. And so here's the example that I'll give in kind of a concise way. But let's say that I see a lot of women in my practice, and we bump up against self-worthiness a lot. And women who are conditioned to play it small. And so then we look at the backside, and we already talked about the third energy center being really in relation to autonomy and individuality. And so when somebody is courted, and this is somebody who has been a primary relationship, let's just say, it's a father or it's a husband or a significant partner who really environmentally creates that environment with the expectation that she will stay small. Okay. And so the courting comes from the back and can hook into that energy center. Now I can do everything in present time to soften that courting and to allow it some space to be released. But I can also take that female and look at some archetypal patterns that may have occurred in the past. And so when I look at the timelines going in the past, I see it kind of like spikes. I see hills and valleys, and the more that I see a specific hill that represents an archetype that was played out. And maybe that is, the damsel in distress. She always needs the assistance of a man to whatever that disempowering archetype might be. And so I work with those peaks, those hills, to where they then come back down and more neutralized into the mainstream of that timeline. And so I ground the past lives as well as soften the cording in present time. And I clear the pathway in the future for her and all of her offspring so that this cycle is something that has been broken. And then we look at the DNA to see if there is a DNA component to where she may have inherited those traits, inherited from them from a lineage of women within her lifetime as well. So, and when I say multifaceted, I'm not kidding. There's so many different layers, again, that are to be revealed in divine timing.
And to your point, that's why it takes time, right? Because
Yeah,
there could be so many different elements at play that go beyond um what you can see in front of you, right? That go beyond, like, okay, there's an imbalance here, but what's causing it? And even when you find out what's causing it, that could just be one layer, right? It's kind of like this surgical excavation from a spiritual sense.
true.
which
So
is
very true.
which is very fascinating about this work and why I get so geeked out about it, because again, it just really ties back into the fact that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and a lot of what manifests in our physical world is starts off in the spiritual realm, right? And I think we're at a point you know, in society now where people just can't ignore these facts anymore. But for you, I want to know, how do you protect yourself? Because you're coming across a lot of people who need to balance their energy, and you're, a human being yourself. So I'm sure you have moments where you need to balance your energy or have physical ailments that, plague you. How do you protect yourself while doing this work? And how do you help yourself if you find yourself in a situation where there's an imbalance in your chakra system?
Oh, so okay, I am human, and so I have my go-to people when I need assistance. I mean, I do personal cleansing and charging on a daily basis. My energetic hygiene is probably better than most. I am incredibly rigid about my boundaries, and I mutually separate with all of my students and with all of my patients. So that's something that I practice what I preach because I didn't when I was practicing as a chiropractor, and that's what led to my sickness. So I will never go down that path again. So I'm very rigid about my energetic boundaries. And when they do get violated, and I didn't see it coming, then I try my best to replenish myself and to repair myself. But I always, always appreciate the assistance of other practitioners as well.
If you don't mind me asking, and feel free to, not have to answer this because I know it's personal, what was the illness that you picked up when you didn't have as much of, when your boundaries weren't as strong with your patients?
Sure. So basically I went through an adrenal fatigue. It was completely exhausted. So which affected all of my hormones, which affected my sleep, which affected my reproductive hormones, which affected my mental well-being. And so to make a long story short, it was physically really, really hard to repair. And I was under the best advice of some integrative practitioners out there. So yeah, that's what ended up happening.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you have any sort of high level tips that people can use to cleanse their energy daily, or to check in with their body on a somatic level to kind of figure out what's going on within them if they're sensing an imbalance?
Yeah, I think one of the most underutilized tools or resources that we have available is the frequency of the earth. And so that energy itself is the most saturating and cleansing energy that I believe that we have available to us. So grounding is underutilized. I believe that it's just as simple as setting the intention to meet and greet the frequency of Mother Earth and to allow your physical body to slow down. 7.83 hertz is very slow. It's slow, rhythmic, nurturing, dense. And if we can align our autonomic nervous system and lean away from that parasympathetic go, 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 fight, 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 flight, 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 and come back into be and to digest and to heal within our physical body, I think that that in itself is hugely transformative.
Thank you so much for sharing that. This has been a good conversation, and I Would love to have you back again in the future because I feel like we just scratched the surface, but this was really good. And I can't wait to go back and listen to this episode. I have to ask you, Dr. Mary, have you
Yeah.
shifted in perspective on anything recently? And I ask this question at the end of every conversation because I think we're constantly shifting, and I would love to hear your most recent shift.
Okay, so here it is. Okay, this is for your benefit and for the listeners' benefits as well. I've been really tapping into the quantum field a lot, and I am appreciating more than ever. And this is the shift that I'm referring to. And that if we want to attract a different energy, a different outcome, if you're striving for success or health or relationships, then we get to be that frequency first. So we don't actively push or align ourselves with it. We are that frequency.
Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you or listen to your podcast for more insights?
I appreciate you asking. And listeners, my website is a living, breathing organism. I'm constantly trying to stay updated and I do the best that I can. But on my website, you will find the latest podcast releases for the energy medicine, where we talk about all things that align the mind, body, and spirit. I do my best to invite practitioners onto the show so that we can hold the space for you to find the courage to embody this transformative journey. So that's the mission. I also teach classes, and so my upcoming classes are always available on the website, as well as I do group healing, specifically in the somatic realm, healing the physical body, and I also have my one-to-one offerings as well. So all of that, as I said, can be found on my website at www.drmarysanders.com.
Perfect. I'm going to leave those links in the show notes. Thank you, Dr. Mary, for stopping by Shifting Dimensions.
The honor has been mine. Thank you.